Welcome back, ScreenRanters! Have you ever watched a film and thought, gee, that reaction sure looks real? Well, sometimes there's a pretty good reason why an actor's injury looks real. It's because it's an actual injury. From mistakes to freak accidents, actors can be hurt for all sorts of reasons when shooting a scene, only for their pain to be immortalized on the silver screen. Today, we're gonna look at the times when an actor's very real injury made the final cut of the film. We'll also go over what happened and the aftermath, so be sure to check your insurance information and let's get started. Let's kick off with perhaps the most well-known incident of an actor injuring themselves on screen: Leonardo DiCaprio in Django Unchained. During a pivotal scene involving his character Calvin Candy laying threats toward Christopher Waltz and Jamie Foxx's character Dr. King Schultz in Django, DiCaprio slammed his hand on the table to get their attention. However, he also unknowingly slammed his hand onto a small stemmed glass. Whoops! It, of course, broke on impact. A fragment of the glass lodged itself into DiCaprio's hand. Even though that would have hurt, DiCaprio didn't react. He stayed in character throughout. Even when his red body juice began to flow from the wound, DiCaprio incorporated it into the scene and Quentin Tarantino kept filming. When the scene finished, the cast and crew reportedly applauded DiCaprio's performance. For that injury alone, he should have been given all the acting awards that year. DiCaprio and Tarantino then had the idea of Candy smearing the juice onto Kerry Washington's face as intimidation. But fear not, faithful viewers, they used fake people juice to make it a little less gross and not a biological hazard. This time, it was the iconic Wizard of Oz from 1939 to plop in such a moment. In the scene, the Wicked Witch of the West arrives in Munchkin County and attempts to grab the ruby slippers from her now piked sister. Little Z Nation reference there. Anyway, only Dorothy ends up getting the magic slippers. So the witch threatens everyone, including the little dog, before departing in a flash of red mist and fire. Well, that actor that played the witch, Margaret Hamilton, actually did what we call an undertaker. Just like the legendary wrestler, Hamilton too was harmed by pyro. When the trapdoor opened, Hamilton was hit directly with the fire. She suffered third-degree burns to her hand and a second-degree burn to her face. Hamilton took several weeks to recover at the hospital and at home. After the incident, she refused to do any stunts that involved fire. The stunt actor that was brought in, Betty Danko, was also injured during the skywriting sequence. The pipe she was on exploded and caused a lot of scarring to her legs. The Wizard of Oz was a bit of a health and safety nightmare. After DiCaprio accidentally decorated the room red, the second most famous not-on-purpose ouchie scene goes to Viggo Mortensen in 2002's Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers. In this iconic scene, Mortensen as Aragorn, Orlando Bloom as Legolas, and John Rhys Davies as Gimli are looking for Merry and Pippin. Instead, they come across a smoking pile of bodies. Within the smoldering mound, they find a belt belonging to the hobbits. Now, Team Good believes the two have been slain. So Aragorn reacts. He spots a helmet on the floor and punts it. Only it wasn't a prop helmet that should be kicked. It was a real helmet. Mortensen broke 2 toes due to this. Instead of screaming whilst curled up on the floor like most people, Mortensen remained in character and channeled the pain into a primal scream of frustration for the apparent fallen hobbits. Due to the reaction, director Peter Jackson kept that take in the final cut of the film. Bloom wouldn't escape injury on set either. He fell from a horse during a take and fractured a couple of ribs. In 2014, we saw the almost Gambit Channing Tatum and current Hulk Mark Ruffalo appear in the same film, a nearly Marvel get-together. The film was Foxcatcher. After Tatum's character Mark Schultz lost an important wrestling match, he arrived alone in his hotel room. He was devastated. The pressure of training for so long and then losing was too much. He began to punch himself over and over again, then looked in the mirror as he smacked himself. Well, this is when Tatum did a little improvising. He decided to smash his head against the mirror 3 times with a lot of force. He was meant to hit the mirror, just not quite as strong as he did. It was so powerful that after Tatum shattered the prop glass, he went through the drywall holding up the mirror. The cuts to Tatum's head are genuine. It's real people juice involved in that moment. On top of that, Tatum has stated that he believed he broke his hand while training for Foxcatcher. In another scene with Ruffalo, Tatum Tatum asked him to slap him hard, so Ruffalo did. The force ended up popping Tatum's eardrum. After Malcolm McDowell's Alex in 1971's A Clockwork Orange had dabbled with the old ultra-violence, he was sent to prison for 14 years. Whilst there, Alex hears about the mysterious Ludovico technique that might mean he gets released early. So he applies and gets accepted for the course. As part of this reform, Alex is strapped to a chair, his eyes forced open with hooks, and is made to watch horrific videos. Well, it might not surprise you considering the grotesque contraption used, but McDowell actually suffered an eye injury from this scene. His corneas were scratched numerous times by the metal hooks. At one point, McDowell even received a cut from the hook that nearly resulted in him losing his vision permanently. Well, in order to make this scene a little less dangerous, an actual doctor was brought to set. The hand that squeezes the drops into McDowell's eye is the actual doctor. If the drops weren't put in, McDowell's eye could be damaged from becoming too dry. The doctor was there to make sure there was no more serious injuries to McDowell's peepers from scratching or dryness. He may have won an Oscar for his performance, but George Clooney probably wondered if it was worth it after what happened in 2005's Syriana. In the scene, Clooney as Bob Barnes is kidnapped. He ends up tied to a chair with Mark Strong's character Moussaoui doing some intense physical interrogating. Moussaoui hits Barnes so hard that he falls out of the chair and hits the floor with a thump. Well, that brutal fall isn't actually Clooney acting. He genuinely hit his head with a lot of force on the hard floor. Clooney then spent 2 weeks in hospital in excruciating pain and with memory loss. Yet the doctors had no idea what the cause was. For weeks, he was in agony. Clooney has stated that the thought of living his life with this pain was frightening. Eventually, Lisa Kudrow, the Friends actor, suggested that Clooney go see her brother, Dr. David Kudrow, a neurologist. He was able to see that Clooney was actually leaking spinal fluid after that fall. Clooney underwent a number of surgeries to help ease the pain. When The Exorcist came out in 1973, the genre of ferociously frightening films, alliteration, was changed forever. They moved away from being in a niche market to becoming more mainstream. Well, Ellen Burstyn probably didn't think it was worth being in it after what happened. She took on the role of Chris McNeil in the Possession flick. During a scene with her possessed daughter, the two get into a scuffle that ends up with Chris being slapped across the room. The pain in Burstyn's voice as she hits the floor is oh so real. You see, Burstin was tied to a stunt wire that would drag her across the room for the effect. However, the director William Friedkin wasn't too happy with the reaction. Burstin believes Friedkin suggested to the person pulling the cable that they should do it harder on the next take to get a bigger reaction. They did just that. The force of the impact caused Burstin to permanently damage her spine. The following year, Burstin would collect her first Oscar, which hopefully eased the memory of that scene for her. Beyond yelling about "What's in the box?", 1995's Seven will also have another memory for Brad Pitt that will live long in the noggin. Only this one isn't as fun. While shooting the scene of Pitt's character Mills chasing down John Doe, Pitt took a tumble. Apparently, he slipped on the wet cars as he jumped from one to another, showing that Mills/Brad Pitt and Jake Peralta from Brooklyn Nine-Nine have a lot in common. Anyway, the slip caused Pitt to put his arm through a window and cut a tendon in his arm. Uh-oh. So now Pitt was going to have an injured arm throughout the film. Otherwise, the production would have to wait for weeks, if not months, until it fully healed, which would cost a lot of dollar bills, y'all. So the script was adapted. Now, in that same scene, the arm is hidden more so during filming. Then, we have Mills get hit on the actual injured arm with a crowbar, explaining in the story why his arm is a mess for the remainder of the film. Prior to being one of the best Batman actors of all time, yeah, we said it, Ben Affleck was cast in 1993's Dazed and Confused. The film was directed by Richard I Like Working with Ethan Hawke Linklater. In one segment, Affleck's character O'Banion goes to spank a student with a paddle. However, the bullied kids have had enough of O'Banion's antics, so they cover the meanie in an absolute load of paint. Think of the famous scene in Carrie, but more PG-rated. Now, Dazed and Confused, like the film's title, O'Banion wanders off towards his car, paddle in hand, whilst yelling threats at the spectators. Then, O'Banion decides to break the paddle by striking the concrete floor. That's where it all goes wrong for Affleck. If you watch closely, you can see Affleck's ankle bend inwards as the bat hits the ground and ricochets against his foot. He then twists his body around. Both of this contribute to a pretty badly sprained ankle for Affleck. He limps slightly before getting into his car. Only 4 years later, he collected his Oscar for Good Will Hunting. Halle Berry is an insurance company's nightmare. The poor actor seems to get injured rather frequently in Hollywood. She hit her head on a lighting rig in Catwoman, hit her head on the ground in The Call, broke her foot in Cloud Atlas, and choked on a fig in Die Another Day. But the biggest might have been in 2003's Gothica. During one scene, her character Miranda Gray is trying to understand her current situation with Pete Graham, who might look familiar to some, wink. When Gray begins to panic, Graham attempts to restrain her. However, this is when it gets icky. Robert Downey Jr. was too forceful and accidentally twisted her arm too far as he held her down. This action caused Barry's arm to break, which we get to see in the actual film since it's in this video. Downey even heard the pop as Barry's ulna snapped. Gross. Production of Gothica had to be halted for 8 weeks until Barry's arm had properly healed. According to the cast and crew, it was just a massive accident. However, reportedly, Barry still hasn't forgiven Downey to this day. And that's a wrap. Which actor injury made you squeal with empathy the most? Let us know in the comments below. If you somewhat feel enlightened by the video, please like, share, and subscribe. All of those actions really help us out. Finally, thanks for joining us today. Bye-bye.